Hey guys, happy Monday. Hopefully you guys had an awesome weekend. It was nice here in Pittsburgh. Finally, we had some decent weather. We had some crazy storms over the weekend. But we're finally in the 70s and 80s, so things are perking up here in Pittsburgh. It's not cold anymore. So today it's feeding day. We have our bucket of frozen stuff there. So that's what my goal is this morning. It can take a while sometimes. I wish things ate frozen thawed more readily, because I seem to be able to put weight on the snakes better when they're frozen thawed, because I can like pinpoint the correct size meal for that snake. And like this male here who's still up for sale, he eats frozen thawed and he's put on weight infinitely faster. Let me get that in the sunlight here. He's put on weight a lot faster than the snake that is eaten live on a regular basis, especially because I don't want to put a live meal in with a small snake that could potentially hurt the snake. I like feeding frozen thawed, but when snakes go off frozen thawed, I'm not going to stop feeding them. So I just switch them over to something live. If you haven't done so yet, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. I usually forget to ask that at the beginning of every video, but it's really important to do that, and it helps get this content to more people. So that's what we're doing this morning, is we are feeding. Some updates here are that this girl here, pre-lay shed was the 26th of March. And as you can see here, it's the 15th of April. Usually these videos I'm recording them like the day that I'm posting them, so everything's pretty up to date. But she's getting huge. She's curled up here. She is due to lay here in the next 10 days or so, and this girl's only about 4 days behind her. So we have a lot of stuff going on there. Let's see, I have something in the incubator that is due to hatch here like the first week of May. And if you're doing the press and seal method, you usually have to burp these containers, meaning you kind of let more air into them the closer you get to hatch date. And what I typically do is I just roll it back halfway, so it does keep some of the moisture in there. As you can see, my water only method, it's still, that water's not really evaporating anywhere, but rolling this press and seal back a little bit allows more oxygen circulation. And as you can see, those eggs are starting to dimple a little bit in the back. These two or three monstrous ones up front aren't yet, but the smaller ones in the back are. So hopefully they all start to sort of desiccate a little bit here. But yeah, I mean, these are the ones that could potentially be like 8 gene ultramels. Hopefully I get good odds, because it was an ultramel to a head ultramel, and I haven't proved out the head ultramel yet, so I'm hoping that she was ID'd properly when I bought her. And they're also pos het pieds, but there's like 8 genes. Like the dad was an OD, Leo, Firefly, Yellow Belly, potentially Enchi, and the female's a Black Pastel Bamboo. So, depending on how many genes he proves out to be, he's either 5 or 6, and she's 2 for sure. I could be hitting 7 or 8 gene ultramels, which is crazy. So that's what's going on with those eggs. And I wanted to do a quick follow-up on my video last week about, my top 2 most important snake racks, in which I said was the Mini 130 and were the 5540s from ARS. Now, if you haven't noticed, I do prefer ARS to Freedom Breeder. I like that these are magnetic. As you can see, everything I do here is magnetic. These are little magnets that I buy off Amazon. They fit perfectly along these rails. I put my Husbandry Pro QR codes on them, so it's very easy to scan. I even have extra magnets right here, and on those extra ones I can mark the last time the female shed, what her follicle size is, how many locks I have with them. This one, like, I have the pre-lay sheds in the dry erase. But so you could also, what I wanted to go back to was kind of, no doubt the 5540s are probably the most important rack to have. But there's an argument. I did say in my video that I said the Mini 130 was my most important for the smaller snakes. And if you're breeding at larger scale, it's absolutely probably necessary unless you have a bunch of smaller PVC racks. Now, if you're not having 20 or 30 or more clutches a year, you could make the argument that maybe the 1065 is actually the better choice for you. And that's actually, I did buy this one before this, mainly because this wasn't out yet. When I was ready to buy a smaller rack, this was ARS's smallest rack when I bought it. Now the difference is hatchlings thrive in this rack as well. This is basically hatchlings to like 6 months old. This basically will hold your snakes up to a year. I have 700-gram snakes in here. At that point, I feel like when they're pooping, it's making too much of a mess and they need to come out of this rack and move in the 5540. But my hatchlings, that when I used to put hatchlings in this, I did not have any issues with these snakes thriving at hatchling size. Obviously, here we go. My lightning pied girl here shed and pooped, so I got to clean that this morning. But she's probably 250 grams, I would say. And, you know, at that size, I mean, it's perfect for them. But let's see here. I have some small, my black xanthus I moved over in here recently, and she's deep in shed, but she's, I would say, 150 grams. As you can see, it's a good size for them. It's still tight. They're pretty shallow tubs, like height-wise. So, you know, it still gives that sort of the den feel to them, like a tight, nice, like rodent den to sleep in. So if you're not breeding at large scale, you know, I would say 20 plus clutches a year, the 1065 may actually be a better option for you, rather than buying the mini 130, because it will hold your snakes longer. The big difference is the amount of snakes it holds, in my opinion. This is 130 snakes versus 65 snakes. That's half the amount of snakes. Now, they don't hold them for quite as long. This is like 6 months versus mainly probably up to a year, depending on how fast your snakes grow. But that's mainly the big difference. But if this holds 65 snakes and you plan on having 10 clutches a year, you know, on average, a clutch should be about 6 eggs. So that's 60 snakes. Well, that's perfect then. You're not going to outgrow that if you're keeping snakes in it for up to a year. And then at that point, then you need to worry about having the 5540s ready. So, you know, you could go either way depending on what the amount of volume you're producing is. I've always been against producing high volumes of clutches. I don't think it does anybody a service to say, oh, how many clutches are you making this year? To be honest, I kind of think it's a dumb way to look at it. I don't know how else to say it. You shouldn't be producing for volume. If, you know, morph market right now and the market in general right now tells you anything, it's that you can't, it's not sustainable to have 40,000 plus snakes on morph market, plus whatever's being sold at the local shows, at the big shows. Our market can't sustain that. It's not big enough. There's not enough breeders and pet owners to sustain that amount of volume. And because of that, that lower end stuff isn't selling. People are giving it away for free, or extremely cheap. And as a breeder, you're losing money if you're trying to sell a snake for 50 bucks. There's no way you can make money on that snake. By the time you buy the parents and feed the parents and feed the babies and take up rack space and take up incubator space and all that stuff, you're not making money on a $50 snake. It's not sustainable as a business. It's not even sustainable as a hobby. A $50 snake isn't paying for itself. I even had somebody in my Patreon who had a bunch of lower end snakes that he was even having trouble giving them away for free. And then again, you're losing snakes. Yes, it's a nice hobby, but you're making a bunch of snakes that nobody wants. So what sort of home are you putting those snakes into? Not everything needs to be I just recently sold, oh man, I got a lot of poop to clean this morning. I recently just sold the male version of this female for over $4,000. And not everybody is buying and selling $4,000 or $5,000 snakes, and not everybody can produce $4,000 or $5,000 snakes. But they actually do sell quicker sometimes than the snakes that are $50. This guy here, he's a Mojave het black exanthic, and he's pos het hypoimpied. And as you can see here, I'm saving the shed because I'm probably going to end up needing to get him shed tested to prove out the hypo and the pied. But I've had him marked down to $350 so far, and nobody has picked him up yet. And he's a potential triple het snake, and a very kind of important triple het if he does prove out. And nobody has wanted him yet. So, he's going to keep probably, I'm going to shed test him. I'm going to see what genes he is. And that's going to further, I might maintain the price. It might make it easier for me to sell him at list price. Or it might make me knock the price down even more. And at that point, he was born probably 2-3 months ago at this point. That's 12 feedings that I've given him. And if he ends up being a $50 snake or a $100 snake, my profit margin there is not going to be very large. So I never, ever tell somebody to breed quantity. It's about the quality of the snakes you're making. It's about raising your floor, having a high floor, meaning that if your worst snakes you're making are worth $100 or $150 at worst, that's okay. But the worst snakes you're making shouldn't be snakes you're giving away for free, because it doesn't do any good for anybody. So, these racks, nobody should be making high quantity of lower end pet quality snakes. Obviously, what I'm doing here is making a lot of nice snakes. So my goal is to really never go over 30 clutches or so. This rack is probably going to be perfect for that for the foreseeable future, because by the time my clutches at the beginning of the year, like that Ultramel, this 8-gene Ultramel clutch, that's hatching now. That's actually the only clutch I have in there currently. That's gonna hatch. They're gonna be in here, and then these 2 clutches are gonna be laid. And so these snakes are gonna be in here for 2 months before I have any more hatchlings go into here. And at that point, if I were running out of space in here, it'd be okay to move those snakes over to this rack. And that's kind of, why I have both of them. But yeah, it's all a game in terms of, shuffling around the Tetris pieces. If you're on a smaller scale, let's say you have, 4 or 5 females, 10 females, I would probably any day of the week recommend going with the 1065. You might soon outgrow that 1065. It might take 2 or 3 years, but that's probably where you want to go. But if you've been doing this for 3, 4, 5 years, and you have a 70-30 full of adult females that are ready to go, and you have a 55-40 and it's half full with females that are ready to go, you probably need the mini 130. And you may even already have a 1065, but you probably need a 1065 too. At that point, last year, what did I have? 25. This is my 25th clutch, 26 clutches. Maybe 26 clutches last year, plus a few that didn't make it. Some of them were probably like 2 or 3 clutches that were bad or all slugs. And I never fully filled up the mini 130. I was close a couple of times, especially because my boas had, she had 30 babies at one point. And this was never filled up all the way either, but it did. At one point I maybe had four levels left, and then at that point, my 5540s are filled. I have that one open spot up top. I have a Dumerals boa like down here at the bottom. Everything else in these 2 racks is filled. Now I have 6 spots up here on top of this rack, and I have my 3 blood pythons at the bottom, and 2 of them are females, and they're quite big. So I'm probably moving those into these 2 remaining PVCs I have. So I'll have 8 spots in this rack, which means my 8 biggest females I can move out of here, plop them in there. But then as you can see, I have 10, 13 ball pythons that are growing out in this rack that need moved at some point. So I only have 8 spots in this rack. That's going to remove 8 spots from here. So I'm going to have 5 snakes that I can't move into this immediately. I do keep my VE6 over here unused and there's 12 spots in here. So if I need to, I can put them in there. But I'm hoping that by the time the winter rolls around and ARS has their sale for Black Friday, I can wait till then to buy a 5540. If not, I'll just need to bite the bullet and do it now. But you'll always need to do a lot of shuffling around with these things. Some snakes grow faster than others. I have some snakes that are up to a year old now, and one's almost 1,500 grams, and her cousin is like 600 grams, and they're like a month apart in age. So they all grow at different rates. But if you're doing a small quantity of snakes of clutches every year, 1065 is probably better for you. If you're doing over 20 some, you're probably going to want a mini 130. But you know, if you're doing over 20 clutches a year, you're also probably going to have multiple 5540s. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, strategy and which racks you want to buy. So make sure you do your research first before just going out and buying something, because these aren't cheap. I mean, I think these cost over $3,000 to get them shipped to me, and I'm not far from ARS. They're in Indianapolis and I'm in Pittsburgh. So I'm in zone 1 for shipping, but it's still these costs, the base cost is a little over 2,000, 2,400, but it still cost me over $3,000 to get it shipped here. So, that kind of, it can be tough. So do your research. Look into my Patreon. I spend a lot of time in the Instagram group talking to people and answering questions. And the other people in that group also do a really good job of helping each other out, because there's very experienced people, and there's people that just got into the hobby that have 5 snakes. There's people that have been doing it for 20 years. So there's a lot of information flowing around in there, and that can help a lot of you guys, especially if you're looking at getting into this as a business.